The other day I was talking to my wife, and we were talking about our love life. And I was trying to figure out a way to say, hey, how can we make this more vibrant and consistent? Not that it's bad or terrible, there's no knock on her.
Yep.
But I know, at least for me, I'm amped, and I, would prefer far more frequency,
As is
and
true for most men. Yes.
right. And so as I sat down, I was like, what can we do here? And she says, well, if we could cuddle more, not sexually,
Right.
if I could just lean up against you and be like, you not belch, ugh, get off me, I'm full.
Yes.
If we would turn off the TV and spend more time talking. And so then I realized there's a lot of areas in my marriage I'm not engaged in.
Yeah.
And because of that, it's a turnoff to my wife.
Yeah, true.
That was a huge, frying pan hit over the head moment, where my head's going, blah, 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 and I'm like, all right, so I need to be more engaged, which has caused me to start contemplating what other areas.
Yeah. What I love about your question, actually, and topic is maybe two things. Is one, that what you're saying is the engaged to engaged. You're acknowledging and owning and recognizing that there is the question of why am I not engaged is a helpful question. So when we start to look at areas of our life, marriage or work or fitness or finances, as you just rolled them off, is when we're not engaged, the first place to start is to ask the question, well, why? Why am I not? What about it is not, sometimes it's just not clear to me. Like in marriage, my wife and I have been married 26 years.
Congrats. That's great.
Yeah. And so we've had that same conversation many times. And one of the things I learned was I didn't know what I didn't know, especially, areas of sexual intimacy, especially. I did not know what I did not know. And what I mean by that is, like, I remember we had a marriage coach once we met with, and he said, do you realize basically what he said is, you think sex equals intimacy, and your wife believes intimacy, sex is the byproduct of intimacy. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? It doesn't? You mean intimacy and sex are not the same? He's like, not to your wife. What? How come nobody told me this? So it was really helpful to say, hold on, time out. What does intimacy mean? Because in that case, it wasn't that I wasn't engaged. I just didn't even know that it was a different thing. I didn't know intimacy. And so beginning to prioritize, and he basically went on to say that intimacy always results in the possibility of more sexual intimacy. Relational intimacy does, but sexual intimacy does not always result in more relational intimacy. And that was super helpful. Like, oh, okay. Wow, I had no idea. So back to engagement, I think sometimes we just unconscious of our disengagement or our lack of engagement because we may not even understand what's going on. Whereas in other places, like in work as an area, it's maybe a little bit easier, especially for us as men, to be clear about that. Like, hey, I know I'm not engaged. And the question I like to ask with that engagement is, are you offering your whole self? So your whole person, as you talk about in your podcast, is all of you available? Is all of you invested in what you're doing? And sometimes it may not be. So I've had plenty of jobs and careers over the years. Like you mentioned, you're 21 in 4 years. I've had lots of them where I was intentionally not offering all of me, but it was a choice. I think the difference is being a choice, and when we're passive in our disengagement, that's very destructive to us at a soul level over time. because it reminds me of, have you ever seen the movie Shawshank Redemption?
One of my favorites.
Yeah. So, Red and Andy Dufresne are having a conversation about hope. And Andy says, well, they can't take what's in here and here from me. And he's like, I'm talking about hope. He's like, what are you talking about? Hope's a dangerous thing. And he goes, yeah, but it may be one of the best things. And I think what happens so often is people in their disengagement just allow hope to die. There's something in us that atrophies.
That's a pin drop instead of a mic.
Yeah.
Hold on. Say that again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the bottom line is when hope dies, when we let hope die, because you can't be disengaged, actively disengaged, and not pay a cost for it, because we're not made to be partial. We're wholly integrated. So for us, like I've worked with thousands of people, whether in my work in like, that's part of the work I do in the world, as well as spent 20 years in a sales career. So I was with people all the time and customers. And what I would gauge is like their eyeballs. I would pay attention to their eyes to see how engaged are they in the work they're doing. What's the vocabulary they use? Do they say hump day and thank God it's Friday and don't work too hard kind of phrases? What's their vocabulary like? And I would notice is like these people, they're atrophying. Something in them is shriveling up and eroding because they're playing a game. And so often, because work is about our own personal survival and food, clothing, and shelter, so often people just downshift, they sleepwalk, they atrophy, they disengage so that they can survive. And my whole storyline in this book and my life's work is about, we can't do that. We can't fall asleep and expect for our wholeness to remain, because part of us, like Red offered in Shawshank Redemption, is, yeah, but if you just let that part of you die, that's a way to survive. And that's the part that I'm calling BS on.